As a straight guy, what is the biggest turnoff you've ever had on a first date with a girl?
She was really attractive. We had great conversation and a really fun date. We were both excited about how things were going, and then it came time for our first kiss, and she opened her mouth like a baby bird. It was the weirdest thing. She opened her jaw as wide as it would go, mouth wide open, tongue lolling around. After a minute or two, it was apparent that this was how she kissed. I engaged like that for a second, and it was weird and uncomfortable. Mouths wide open, tongues flicking, our teeth tapped once or twice. It felt more like being in a dentist's chair than making out. I closed my mouth down to what I considered a normal, open-mouthed kissing opening, and that meant my lips were fully inside her wide open mouth. It was bizarre. She wouldn't relax her jaw. I guess her previous boyfriend does. We're into that with her. The date ended and all of my attraction evaporated. I remember going home and looking in the bathroom mirror and opening my jaw all the way and trying to figure out how that worked for her and why she liked it.
This was hilarious to read. How completely awkward.
This reminds me of one time I was making out with a guy, and he moved his tongue like how dogs lick their owners. It was very disgusting. LMAO. I don't find the appeal, but it's just incompatibility.
I died at you looking in the mirror trying to figure out, probably both confused and a slight bit defeated, wondering how it all went so weird.
How did it end up like this? It was only a kiss. It was only a kiss.
This made me think of some kind of horror movie, like she implanted something in him.
She burrowed inside and laid her eggs.
Oh geez, that happened to me once as well. I didn't learn until after that she had never even kissed anyone before, much less anything else. Doubly surprising because it wasn't even a date. We were just friends at the time, hanging out at my place, though by that point it was pretty obvious we were into each other. So she decided to shoot her shot and jumped on top me and pinned me down, literally, and leaned in for a kiss. I was surprised but very open to it until she just sort of unhinged her jaw and clamped her mouth around my entire face below my eyes. I'm talking nose, chin, my whole flavor area, and just kind of sat there holding that position. I tried to ask, what are you doing? But it came out more like ADS Olkiaroyaha, KHL. Eventually, I got her to disengage, and we tried again, slower, with me leading, and things worked out. We were able to laugh about it later. We actually dated for about 1.5 years after that.
She couldn't stop talking about another guy and how much she hated him. They got married a few years later.
Straight female here. Went on a date with a guy who would not stop talking about his ex. I finally asked him, after enjoying my drinks, appetizer, and meal without saying a word, if he thinks she was the person for him. He shrugged and mumbled under his breath. The craziest part of the story. He called me for another date. I told him, I think we could be good friends. Never heard from him again.
He was using you for free therapy. I had a guy do this to me on a second date. I declined a third.
I honestly look back and feel a bit bad from the guy. He was so mad and so hurt. I kind of think he was attempting to have a revenge lay, but the breakup must have been fresh because the vibe from him was so aggressive. Had another guy spend the whole date talking about how he didn't believe in marriage. Finally figured out that is why his last long-term girlfriend finally broke up with him, not why I didn't call him back. He stiffed the waiter, which I thought was a dick move.
She showed up an hour late to the date, knowing it took me an hour to go the place she chose. Didn't answer my text asking if everything is all right. She just sat down and told me she was chatting with her friend, didn't apologize. Date was over by that point.
Did you got up and leave or waited for the date to end?
I stayed. We were at this bar that has some great food and I was hungry. The date wasn't the best, but wasn't that bad either. But I knew after that, I lost my interest in her. If she had apologized or had a valid reason for the delay, would be different, but the attitude got me.
I had a date on her phone the entire time. We hadn't ordered yet. I think we had waters on the table. I asked her everything, okay? Your mom, kids, everything's good? She said yes. I was able to see that she was on the dating app we met on typing. She was texting other dudes on the dating app while out with me. I got up, said I'm going to use the bathroom, and left.
I wonder how long it took her to realize you'd left?
Next guy walked in 2 minutes after he left.
Speed dating.
I don't blame you, but honestly, I would have politely explained that her attitude towards the date was disrespectful, then left. People like this won't hear you, but I also wouldn't feel right letting someone treat me that way. A calm and articulate statement is a powerful thing.
People like her don't care. They're just looking for meal tickets.
Nah, it's not your date's job to fix your personality disorder. The person is essentially a stranger at that point, so just leave. Unless you get into a relationship, you have no stake in whether that person ever corrects their narcissistic behavior.
I took a girl to a nice pizzeria for dinner for a first date. They do a thing where they have a different specialty pizza every night, but they don't announce what it is. You just order the trust us. So we did that, and it was some goat cheese, almond, whatever, but it was fine. We talked, ate, and had a really good time. Then we're leaving, and I'm walking with her to her car. She got real quiet, and I asked her if something was wrong. She turned her head and exorcist puked directly into my chest. It was so hard, I had to take a step back. After a brief second for me to wrap my head around what happened, I asked her if she was okay. She turned and ran for her car and drove off. I tried to text and call her to make sure she got home okay, and she never responded. I ended up throwing the shirt away, and my shower got clogged up with chunks that night, but the date itself went really well, and I liked her a lot. So a couple of days later, I texted and said I wasn't mad and would still like to try getting together again. She didn't block me, but never responded. I never say any news stories about a dead woman crashing into a lamppost in that neighborhood, so I assumed she was okay and just was too embarrassed to ever speak to me again. The one that got away.
That poor girl, lol. If someone messaged me asking to go out again after I projectile vomited on them during a nice date, that'd be the biggest green flag. Like, the worst case scenario has already happened. It can only improve from there.
I seem to remember a Reddit story where a girl shit herself on a first date, and the guy cleaned her up and gave her some clothes to wear. They ended up getting married. She was like, if he hangs around after this, he's a keeper.
I mentioned I was watching a fantasy show, and she immediately laughed and said she watched real shows, like The Bachelor.
Yeah, The Bachelor, a show that's about as real as Star Wars.
Did she mean like reality shows? Like non-fantasy? Well, anyway, if she laughed at you, probably dodged a bullet there.
She made fun of a guy at a nearby table that had Down syndrome. Ended the date right then.
Wow, she sounds horrible. Good on you for not putting up with that crap.
We had talked for a couple of weeks before the date, and she gave no indication she had such ugliness in her heart. She caused a bit of a scene when I told her how inappropriate that she had been, and I was ending the date, dodged a bullet as I was starting to really like her, up until that moment, and she showed no remorse.
She refused to talk to me. She gave me just monosyllabic yes or no answers, even to open-ended questions like, what are you doing this weekend? Or, what's your favorite place to vacation? And then afterwards, she called up the mutual friend who set us up and told her I was an amazing guy and she had an awesome time.
I had a date that did this as well. Generally really closed up one-word replies, but she seemed to be enjoying herself. I wasn't getting any eye rolls or anything like that as I rambled on. We've been married 2 years now. She's just awful at first dates.
Same. Had to learn how to unpack my little introvert pumpkin.
Girl showed up with 2 more friends. That date ended quickly, and I got to keep my money.
Happened to me too. Girl showed up with several guy friends, one who was blacked out, drunk, and obnoxious. Faked a phone call and left after 1 drink. No mention whatsoever leading up to the date that her friends would be joining us.
This sucks and is just a degenerate behavior on the other side. Luckily, I always follow what my uncle told me. Always have an exit plan in everything that you do, just in case things go sideways.
This was at a speed dating event. She told me she was a surgeon and asked me if I liked CBT. I replied, as in computer-based training? She replied, no, cock and ball torture. I felt it physically retract.
Huh, I'd have assumed she meant cognitive behavior therapy and replied, yes, it's brilliant. I use it all the time.
That could have been a painfully bad second date.
She turned up to be my ex. On this first date, my friend set up, not knowing she was my ex. At least she wasn't my sister.
That's actually kind of funny.
How did the relationship end? And did you guys hang out for the date or just leave?
We caught up. We broke up years before the date. We ate dinner and went to the theater, not the movies. We broke up because she had sex with a former mutual friend of ours. She had been in a relationship with that person that had ended a couple of weeks before the date. We weren't going to get back together and didn't know we were going out together, but it was nice to catch up on the other's life.
She only wanted to talk about the drama she was directly or indirectly involved with currently. Changing the subject to myself or other more interesting topics resulted in her not talking much or at all until we got back to talking drama, and then she went on about it forever.
Oof, I feel like I've been on that date. Did she spend an inordinate amount of time filling you in on backstory just to finally get to the point and not even realize she is the asshole in the story?
Oh no, it happened to me on a video chat date during the shutdown, and I started having a panic attack. She went on and on about needing to melt large pieces of styrofoam packaging in her backyard, and her neighbors were complaining. There was no second date.